population is going on. And I find in a funny way, maybe because it's the nearest, the little piece here which says winter congregation stroke scattered tower host to pods. Now the whole conversation about the host and that which is being hosted seems to be it's still a very central issue in architecture, whatever methodology you use, because there's room for maneuver. How much do you host, and how much does your guest respond to the host? How does the host have to ameliorate himself, herself, to the guest? And what is the interstitial condition, not just interstitial space, but what is the nature of the animal that is neither host nor guest, but is there? So this whole thing we were talking about earlier. And I think you're quite strong there. I think that the other thing is that you've done a bit of teaching, which you told me only the last time I met you, which is interesting, because you often, before you present a bit of your project, tell me what you're trying to do, where you think you might be going wrong. Now, of course, it's a doggle to have somebody who started teaching as your student. Not the first time it's that, but it's an interesting one. So I think your own jury. The other thing is it's actually quite traditional. I mean, if you come from where I come, it's a traditional approach, rather like the old architects would. You're a good architect if you know how to turn a corner. You're a good architect if you know how to do an entrance vestibule. It's almost in the sort of archiramic world, like the old how to turn a corner, how to enter a vestibule. How you have a bit of a pier. You're not being very radical with your pier. It's a dirty old sort of 19th century bit of sticks and stuff that goes out into the water, not very long. And then you turn off it, and you put some structure down, just like it might be old hunks of wood. If you get it old piers, hunks of metal, you get done. But your ones are a bit more modern, not very modern. Sort of fucking full of period modern. And then you put things in them, like we've always put things in. Him and the lads are probably going to say, or prove to us, that you don't have to put things into things. Although you still have to get inside, and you still have to turn. So that's interesting. So just to cling on to, I'll be looking to see how you turn and how you get inside. But this is still back in the earlier architecture of turning as a business and putting things inside as a business. So one thing you turn. Again, I find it interesting when you try, and you haven't succeeded fully, when you try to mix methods and materials. Because the thing that's been irritated so far this afternoon is always sort of rather black and white, it could be anything but it's only a line and stuff. It's uncomfortable when you put a damp carpet on top of a piece of stainless steel which is dripping over somebody's head who's trying to sleep with a plastic cushion, and the dog is smelling. Kind of work. It reminds me of that, the slightly uncomfortable, the slightly uncomfortable. It's very difficult to do that because architects are generally trained out of it. They're trained to keep things consistent, neat, compatible, quick fit. So I think that territory is one that you could examine. And you come from a hot, wet country. Yeah. You see, so I think that's a clue.
That explains it.
By the way, this little bar, oh sorry, yeah, it's okay. This little bottom piece of the windows. It seems kind of useful. The scale is about right, and it looks like I could, if I click the right combination of those, sort of generate this. So in a future version of a well-funded version of this this would be an electronic panel, and your project, of course, you would touch a few of those buttons and would do some of these things. It was just a sort of small point. I agree very much with Peter about that middle image. I had the scale wrong, and I like it if it's a smaller scale, and it made me, I was thinking of Cedric Rice, I was thinking of some of his versions of temporary systems that would be established to enable educational communities or whatever. And in his case, of course, all those little wires and so on would be connected to a sort of D46 pump, which he calculated would provide just enough energy for 20 people. Of course, for you it's different. It's one of these big hibernation. But think it has a character of an encampment, a sort of nomadic set of tents that have been established, and it's a combination of recycled material, some very standard joints, and a few other things have been put in place to enable a kind of provisional community. And I think it's sort of, it's where you start to go, even though we've heard Cedric, you started to go beyond all the things that we know and created something else. I think the whole narrative of sleeping in the winter and going to the beach in the summer is very bleak. One doesn't know why these post-nuclear insects care about water or land or night or day. But one could easily imagine that for sort of electrical purposes or for information transfer purposes, they have to sleep, and they do so in such a place. So I think there is every reason for us to celebrate your work, and because we can see in it more work, but the work that you're going to do next has to irritate us in another way. You're going beyond the virtuosity. It has to irritate us by having no clear genealogy. It's like the whole jury sort of hesitates for a moment, and there's a sort of discomfort. And the great success, I think, for an architect is that there's a silence in the jury because no one wants to speak first. They're very afraid the project should either be slaughtered or given the Oscar. And it's completely unclear what it is because the terms of discussion have shifted, and it requires some brave, really like soul on the jury to provide some terms that either slaughter or and you have, let's say that would be, and this is like a challenge to you. I think next semester that's what you'll do to us, because you will listen to this and think, okay, the trouble is I get these smart kids who've seen what I do, and they've actually been there when what I do was invented and actually invented it. So I'm going to deliver something 3 months from now that will defeat anybody from Hernan's generation through Peter, which is quite a spectrum.
Maybe we move on to the next. No, I could say something else. Maybe I'll say it very quickly. Part of the retro nature is technological. Let's just talk about tectonics and techniques, okay? The trend technologically in our civilization is towards reducing the number of moving parts, okay? So that you went from kind of machines with lots of joints and things moving about to kind of circuit boards, and then to microchips, right? Nothing moves. So your wristwatch, depends on what kind you have, it doesn't have to have one moving part in it, and it never breaks down. It never has to be repaired. Whereas the old ones used to have to be repaired all the time because, things that move break, machines break. So one could take the next scenario here. Your project is a dystopia of the broken machines on Coney Island, the ones that become wrecked. I mean, this is the perfect stuff of science fiction, right? It's all of that wreckage that lines the beach, all those things that used to work. But either the company went out of business, or, the whole national economy went down, they couldn't any longer supply power to these things, whatever. So you're right on the verge of a kind of dystopian solution. So technologically, you need to kind of critique your project from the standpoint of this mechanicalness, which is very old-fashioned. We don't want things to have mechanical parts anymore. And if you're going now to electric cars and simpler machines with fewer moving parts. So exactly. So every one of these points is a point where the project can fail.
But how do you do architecture without moving parts?
Well, you do it with parts, but what kind of parts are they? That's your job. You're the architect. Don't ask me. You're the architect. Ask yourself that question, and you might come to some interesting answers.
I do like your drawings a lot, but I feel like you're really kinetic.
Of course.
Everything moves up here in front of us, which I think is a really wonderful facility that you have. I almost want to see them move, but it really captures it. I think Mark's right too that there was something brutal, I don't know if that's the word you used, about or ugly or something about the way this thing came apart, but it does really move. I think that's fantastic.
But in the US of A, do you have the same reaction to sepia that we have in London?